Awesome, Rose, when you're ready. Thank you.
Maloney. Thank you, Ben. It's my privilege to welcome Helen Varney, Director of Tautai Ole Moana, Wayfinders of the Pacific Ocean. Some of us attended Helen's session at the NZEI Pacifica Fono earlier this year in Wellington, and we were inspired by her passion, commitment, and dedication in developing and nurturing the important role of leadership through a Pacific lens. We're so looking forward to hearing from Helen on how we as leaders can strive to do better for our Pacific communities. Thank you, Helen.
Thank you. I'll just share my screen. Sorry. And slideshow. So first of all, I want to thank you for throwing me under the bus and being second.
No, you're fine, honestly.
Just want to show you my.
Yeah, you've got the copy too. Yay!
I do too. Yeah. So I'll do my best.
No, you'll be fine, Helen.
No
Wonderful.
worries.
Yeah.
Look, thank you, everyone. Thank you for inviting me and giving me this opportunity. I just want to share basically. This morning, I want to follow on from what was in the first presentation, but looking at it from a strategic direction. So first of all, thank you. And for me, being culturally competent for Pacific learners matters, truly matters. Start with the an opening for the meeting for me. Whakatakata hau ki te uru. Whakatakata hau ki te tonga. Kia ma kina ki uta, kia ma taratara ki tai. E hi ake ana te takura, he tio, he huka, he hauhu, ti he mauri ora. And I chose to do that in Māori because of Māori Language Week this week. Look, today I want to sort of share some ideas about what matters in shifting the lens into the space of being culturally competent. And I want to start with who you are matters, who I am matters, who you identify as matters, who I identify as matters, how others identify you and me matters, identity matters. And in that vein, therefore, I really need to introduce who I am. Because the things that I do, the way that I behave, my values that are seen in my actions and behaviours come from where I started my journey. And to do that, first of all, we have to understand how complex our journeys are for all of us. Our backgrounds, our heritages don't just start with when we're born. They're already there. They're based in the heritages that we have from the past. I was born Helen Teresa Cecilia Varney. I was born in Aotearoa, New Zealand. My father, Eli Early, came from Whangalu in American Samoa. He came to New Zealand for a better life, as most of our Pacific families did back in 1952. He started life working on the wharf as a sweeper, but he met this beautiful woman as she walked down the gangplank of a ship when she arrived from Rarotonga, and decided that being a sweeper on the wharf was not going to attract this woman to his life. And he became a crane driver. My mother actually arrived in New Zealand wanting to become a nun, but of course met Dad, and 6 weeks later they were married. Their backgrounds set the pathway for my background. Their values were instilled in me from birth and still follow through who I am today. The value of service is very, very strong, and I want to sort of drive that through some of the work that I'll be sharing with you today. The next most important person in my life I met when I was 17. I knew that I would marry him because he would do anything I said back in those days. Things have changed a bit now, but, you know, we're still together 40 odd years later. We have a wonderful, wonderful life. We have two beautiful sons, James and Michael. And I thought my life couldn't get any better after having these two beautiful children until these people arrived, and they're my moko. And it's when you start to get this part of your life growing and strengthening that you truly start to understand why you're here. And the purpose in your life must be driven in a way that supports the growth of all of you around you. Now, what you can see in that photo are very blonde, blue-eyed young people, but they are brown on the inside. All of them have that Pacifica lens that helps them to understand where I come from and why I behave the way I do, and why some of the things that other people see as, oh, absolutely crazy out there, are part of who I am. My husband and I are still married. You might not be able to see us down there. He's changed a lot. I still look the same. However, a wonderful life that we lead.
I'm not going to repeat that. Sorry. I'll just mute myself again. Sorry.
So who I am matters. Who we are matters. And so in my life, prior to becoming a teacher, I was driven by the fact that the family and the village in which I grew up in and the family were important to me and to all that I do. When you step outside that village, you start to meet people that you connect with that make a difference to your life. One of those groups of people was New Zealand Pacifica Principles that made a huge influence on who I am today as a leader. And we sort of together developed this leadership focus, which unpacks a leader's lens through that of a Pacifica lens. And we did this through three main groups: the New Zealand Pacifica Principles Association, New Zealand Principles Federation, and the Ministry of Education. And the three of these groups formed what is known today as Tautai Moana. I want to give you this background because it's important to see where we sit in terms of the information that I want to share with you as I work through this presentation. Now, Tautai Moana actually came about because of two main key people. One was Whetu Cormac, when he was president of NZPPA, had a number of discussions with the Secretary of Education and the then Associate Minister for Pacific Education, Minister Salisa. Already underway at the time was the MAC, the Māori Achievement Collaboratives, and Whetu, along with, has it come up? Philly Vaifale, Jason Swan, worked together to try and understand what throwing a Pacifica lens over Pacifica achieving success as Pacifica under a leadership focus would look like. And these two people, together with a number of members of the New Zealand Pacifica Principles Association and the support of consultants like Dr. Ray Se'ilata, designed a pathway to improve outcomes for strengthening leadership. What we found along the way was what we believe matters. What we believe matters because if we unpack what we believe in terms of leadership, we start to see that the lenses that come into leadership are varied. As I said, we work through the Pacific lens. We look at the wayfinder in us. And Whaatili Yaisua Esera has set a wonderful framework around what we do with our principals and leadership teams that we work with. And we work across the country. We're now working with 81 schools across Aotearoa and New Zealand, ensuring that we are strengthening leadership capabilities to ensure that we improve outcomes for Pacifica learners. Tautai Moana is the PLD arm of the New Zealand Pacifica Principles Association. We link very closely to that, and all of our facilitators that work in this space are principals that belong to the New Zealand Pacifica Principles Association. So very quickly then, our journey, just to give you the background, is Tautai Moana started basically in 2019, not that long ago. In 2020, we brought on board principals across Auckland and Wellington to work under this umbrella. And we started with 17 principals. In 2021, we realised that what we're doing is actually tapasa, strengthening tapasa and strengthened by tapasa. So we moved into a deeper space and have PLD providers in this area. In 2022, we became members of the PLD provider panel. And in 2023, we're focusing on developing further cases into aspiring leaders and their leadership pathway. 2024 brings us a whole new journey. So I just wanted to shape that so that you can see where I come from in terms of the work that we're doing. Now, so initially it's about who I am matters. It's then about who we are matters. And then it's about what we know matters. So what we know is that in education, there's a huge complexity of documents and information that support us to look closely at what the key idea of what we're trying to put across today, which is the key shift 3 in ensuring that we have culturally competent leaders in front of our diverse Pacific learners. What we have to understand is where that APP, our Action Plan for Pacific Education, fits and what really balances it. So what's important to understand are the NELPs, the National Educational Learning Priorities, and how these 5 key objectives link closely to not only the Action Plan for Pacific Education, but Kahikitea, and of course our refreshed plan. Well, I want you to see the connection between these things is that if we want to be culturally competent, we have to understand the connections that are out there, the connections with people, the connections with processes, the connections in strategy, and the connections that we make in terms of connecting all of these things together. So if you look closely at these 3 key element documents, you understand where Key Shift 3 fits and how important it is that this element of the key shift links closely to everything else that's connected to it. For example, if you look closely at the objectives 1, 2, and 3 in the connecting the docs, you link those through to Key Shift 3, all of them marry up towards supporting each other. They're not standalones. They're not isolated documents. They're documents that link closely to ensure that we have a clearer understanding of what our role is in order to meet Key Shift 3, enabling everyone to be culturally competent with diverse Pacific learners. Remember, this is not just about being Pacific. This is about being of all ethnicities and understanding that Pacific lens. So if we go the next step, what we do matters. So what we know matters, what we do matters. And understanding what we do, we take the NELPs, we take our Action Plan for Pacific Education, and we link it closely to tapasa. Just as in the previous presentation, they looked at tapasa. If we stand these documents alone, they become isolated, and they are documents that have some meaning to us, but in isolation. When we link them all together, they give each other strength and power to ensure that we are far more strategic in our thinking and our direction. And then we provide our educators with a real pathway towards becoming culturally competent and why we need to be culturally competent. So improving outcomes for Pacific learners matters. Now, if I just take it that next step, if we look at the quality teaching leadership work that we do in the NELPs, Objective 3, and this is about ensuring that we make a difference to the learners. Now, quality teaching and leadership is not just about learning how to teach reading, writing, and maths. It's how to link learning with our learners under those umbrellas of reading, writing, and maths? What do we know about our learners? What do we know about their backgrounds? What do we know about their values that it can actually help us grow in this area? We then can link more closely to enabling ourselves to become more culturally competent. And this understanding is not just about focusing only on one particular Pacific cultural competence. Remember, across Pacifica, we have a wide range of different ethnicities. All of us come with some values the same, but we also have some values that are different. And we have to understand that these are important in growing our knowledge of the learners that we're going to work alongside. So if we look more closely at how this links, just to give you a clearer picture of strategy and design, we take the quality teaching and leadership, we link it to enabling every teacher and leader to become culturally competent, and we link that then to Turu 3, which looks at closely the effective pedagogies that we need to understand for our Pacific learners. So why we do it matters. Why we have to do this is to understand that Pacific learners and families are safe, valued, and equipped to achieve educational aspirations when we change the way we work to meet the needs of our communities. We must change. Why we do it matters. This is why we do it. We have over 459,000 Pacific people in New Zealand. Now, I reckon this is actually a small amount because remember, this is just Pacifica. Remember, Pacifica, we marry, we intermarry. We have lots and lots of different groups, people that we work with, that we end up marrying because, you know, they fall in love with us. We're probably the best looking ethnic group in the world. So why wouldn't they? Anyway, I think that the New Zealand population, if we looked closer, for Pacifica would be much bigger than this. We also know that the diversity of the population is widespread and that the majority of our Pacific people are in the age groups of under 15 years of age. So what does this mean for education? It means that we've got a great opportunity to ensure that we have a strong influence in ensuring that culture, language, and identity are strengthened across the education landscape. So how we do it matters. Now, remember we talked about bringing strengths, in Turu 3, when you see what it means to understand Turu 3, it's about bringing Pacific strengths and understanding to existing teaching standards. Now, it means that teachers must understand that Pacific learners inhabit different realities and need to engage with them in multiple ways. Simple example, when I went to school, started schooling a very long time ago in the Catholic system, absolutely loved it. But when we walked in that door, we were not Pacifica anymore, we were Catholic. Absolutely beautiful, loved it. However, coming along with a Catholic lens, also remember we come with a Pacific lens. So we can't separate the two. We have to navigate the two. So in Turu 3, this is about teachers, educators understanding that Pacific people don't navigate one space. We navigate several. And that for them to be able to work alongside us, they have to be able to navigate those spaces too. So this is about keeping our Pacific families safe, valued, and equipped to achieve our aspirations. It's not just about the education aspirations of the school, it's the education aspirations of the Pacific people that are in that school. Now, what's important to understand, and it came through clearly in the first presentation, is that within our Pacific lens, we have our Pacific values of service, our Pacific values of drive us to be the people who we are today. It's our traditions, it's our faith, it's our village, it's our aspirations. They're not separate. People look at them separately. They are all part and parcel of who we are. In order to be able to work effectively in the space that we are working in education, we have to understand the different values that different groups of people bring into their school and how these matter. The other thing that I just want to quickly share with you is just a simple framework of how we look at, under the Pacific lens, how we look at service, the VAR, identity, and language. And so if we look back at Key Shift 3, it's important to understand that we don't see this as an isolated piece of information, that it sits under the platform of the different values that we have as Pacifica. So having a plan matters. So for Tautai Moana, we use the Wayfinder framework, which was designed by Va'ateli Consulting, Dr. Ray Se'ilata and her team. And we use this as part and parcel of the focus that we have in and around getting our leaders to shift their thinking and grow their learning. So the first thing we do is we get our leaders to look closely at reading the signs. And the reading the signs might be something like, well, which cultural identities do I understand as a leader? Do I celebrate? And what others do I need to grow? So I'm reading the signs about those things. The second aspect might be, in line for me to be able to strategically move, I need to make adjustments. So some of the things might be, who can I draw on to enrich my knowledge, and share and enrich the knowledge with others. So I have to make an adjustment. I can't do this alone. I have to make some sort of adjustment. That drawing on the multiple knowledges is, who do I access? How do I access this knowledge? And then where might I continue to grow? And also, how can I grow others in some of the things that I know? And the last aspect might be on looking at recalibrating, and that might be, what processes might I undertake in reshaping some of the things that I've been doing? So if I wanted to look closely at readjusting my cultural competence or my cultural lens, I'd work through this framework of stopping still, listening, thinking, seeing. What are the signs that I'm showing that need to help me to shift my lens in what I'm doing in terms of cultural competence? What adjustments might I need to make? Who might I need to grow and learn from? And how might I recalibrate what I'm doing to ensure that moving forward, things are better? So accessing relevant information matters. I talked initially about the Tapasa document and ensuring that we link the information. So everything is there. Everything we need to understand, how we need to shift, what we need to grow, is written in this document. What we need to see is how it fits with our lens, how it fits with our current cultural competence, and what we need to do next. And we can use the Wayfinder framework to support us. I just want to look closely at 3.2, which is actually a beginning teacher aspect of the Tapasa work. And that is just knowing the importance of Pacific cultural values and the approaches in teaching and learning. Now, it looks very simple and it looks like something we can all do, but it's quite in-depth, and it requires people to connect with others. It requires people to understand the why. It requires people to understand the what I do next. And it requires people to ensure that I can come back and re-look at what I've done to grow my important knowledge about Pacific cultural values. The other one I want you to look at closely is 3.6, and that is that I actively seek and adopt different ethnic specific ways of instruction. So if I first of all go back to 3.2 and I know how important Pacific cultural values are, I then need to do some action, and that is adopting some different ways in which I deliver as a teacher. I then could go on to 313 and look at how I demonstrate that and what I've established in setting some culturally safe spaces for the learners that I work with. And then if I wanted to go into more of a leadership role in connecting all of this information, I could take up 3.21, and that looks at leading the development of adaptive expertise within and between the networks that I have to enable reflective practices that are most effective with diverse learners. So what I'm saying is that there is already a wealth of knowledge out there for us to be able to meet the importance of key shift 3, and that is enabling every teacher, every leader, every educational professional to take coordinated action to become culturally competent. Everything is there. What we need to do and what we need to understand is how we can action the plan that will matter. So, what's available to action that plan? The evidence is there in our refresh of the action plan for Pacific education. You don't have to recreate it. You have to read it and understand how it fits. It's there in the actions that are written in the documents that link closely the NALPs, the action plan for Pacific education, and Tapasa. All of those actions are there for us to already connect. Our actions matter. Now, just to sort of round up, because hopefully there will be some questions. I don't see that there are any at the moment. But what I want to say is that who we are matters. What we believe matters. What we know matters. What we do matters. Why we do it matters. How we do it matters. Having a plan matters. Actioning the plan matters. Making a difference to improve outcomes for Pacifica matters. And we do that strategically, and we do that through a leadership lens. Thank you, everyone. I hope I got across what I was trying to get across. I'm still, in the back of my head is still what was said here. Yeah.
First and foremost, Helen, I do agree. Pacific Islanders do look really good looking, and we are very handsome. That's all. Sorry, I'm trying not to laugh. No, it's not the only thing that we actually picked up. Probably the best. Probably, I'm going to be honest here. I think he actually provided a blueprint for principals, aspiring principals out there. You've clearly linked the documents, the NALPs with the action plan for Pacific education, and also for Tapasa. It's a clear link that you can't really isolate documents on their own.
No.
You have to use them together. And I guess that's probably the one thing that principals probably look toward in starting off their journey. I mean, very soon we're going to hear from a first-time principal. It'll be interesting to see how his take on what he's just heard from you today, this morning. So yeah, there are, I think everyone hasn't asked a question because number one, they're so intrigued by what you've done.
They're all asleep. No.
Yeah, no, well, I've got one now, but it's in the chat. It's in the chat. She's put it.
Helen, can you just stop sharing for a second, please?
Sure.
Thank you.
Sorry.
And then I can spotlight Ben, and then we can see who's asking those questions.
So we've got Laura. We've got Laura. Can you? And Laura Carter has said, sorry, Brian, I've just cut you off. Can you suggest how to support Pacific students see the value in their identity when they don't see the value, and those around them have not shown the value?
Okay.
So I guess, yeah.
That must come through their teachers. That is what it's all about. It's leadership, it's teachers, it's then into students. So this is about the pathway. So if we value who we are as teachers and leaders, we value who our students are as teachers and leaders, because they are, then what we do is we engage them in ways of strengthening them further. That's identifying the strengths that they currently have, and that's about their language, their culture, and their identity. So I focus solely on leadership and what leaders do, but we do this, and the pathway is to truly understanding who your learner is. So you know who you are, then you realize how important it is to know who your learner is. When you know your learner, then you help that learner to strengthen who they are.
I think that's the most important take from this. Know the learner. Helen, you've had a lot of reactions during. I don't know if you could. I don't know if you saw them, but there
No.
was a lot of reaction during your presentation, and we've got some comments here from Corrine. She said such clarity, inspiration. So very excited. So yeah, really well done. I have a question, and it's a question that Brian and I were actually talking about the other day, and the question is, what do you think is the most valuable asset that a teacher could bring to diverse Pacific learners? And let's take it from maybe perhaps a provisionally registered teacher, or even a teacher who's a beginning teacher who's just starting their journey. What do you think is the most valuable asset they could have, knowing that they've got Pacific learners? Sorry.
Okay, so not just Pacific learners, but for all learners, is that you truly must love who is in front of you, and you must love them all equally. And I know that sounds odd, and I know that sounds undoable, but when you've got these 30 young faces sitting in front of you, unless you love them, unless you truly want to make a difference in their lives, then it becomes a job. Yeah. Teaching is not a job, it is a life of love. And we impact on our learners in so many ways when we show them that love. Love is seen in different ways, sometimes, and we know that with our own families, but the importance is that love comes from your heart and it comes from your head. And in doing that, we then start to grow a true and real understanding of how important it is to truly know our learners. It all fits beautifully. And then we often think, well, how can we continue to love people over time? We do that. They become part of our lives.
Absolutely.
And we never let them go. I mean, I've got students that I've worked with when I was 22 and they were 11. They're 55 and I'm 65. Well, I'm actually 60. And I still connect with them. You don't let them go.
Absolutely. Totally agree. Love is what you really need in this job. I think teachers, if they can understand that, then I think they'll go a long way. They will go a long way. We've got two questions from class 3, Red Beach. Is the government holding any accountability to ensure schools kaiako are upholding these values?
Well, there are two ways in which they're being, I suppose, focused on. One is through Tautai, the key competencies there. That's aligned to your practicing certificate. So that's a follow-up. What we do have to get and make sure is that principals follow that direction and make sure that they're meeting those competencies. Tapasa, the cultural competencies of Tapasa are also aligned to the Teaching Council. Yes. So although they're not, you don't have to do a sign-off document with it. What we do know is that they are closely linked. And therefore, with that linking, hopefully will come this is what you have to do next. What we do know, though, is that unless we have that cultural knowledge and cultural competencies within us, then teaching actually is much, much harder. Connecting is much, much harder. We get teachers that are stressed out and because they actually haven't been able to connect culturally with their students. And therefore their students don't grow from that. Simple example, attendance at the moment is this big issue. And one of the schools I work with, can't name it, but one of the schools I work with has a group of students who've been absent for about 2.5 weeks, or had been absent for about 2.5 weeks. When they followed up on those, then there were 4 students. When they followed up on those 4 students, they found that one of them was at home looking after grandma because grandma was really sick and mum and dad had to work. One of them was looking after her younger siblings because the solo mum was in hospital. One of them was working because mum and dad had both lost their jobs, and one of them was actually Skyping off. What the problem was that all those 4 students were marked as not attending. Now, what they need to understand is those students were growing their family, growing their service and recognizing that they can lead in other areas. One was teaching her younger siblings. The quality that this young person was doing was great. So what we've got to understand is that we've got to see the strengths that our Pacific students have are not necessarily the strengths that education thinks are important.
Absolutely.
But we know that these life skills are vital to who they're going to be as adults.
Helen, thank you. We've got one more. As a teacher, it's from Joe Hadfield. As a teacher, how can I emphasize the significance of this document within our school, particularly when there is a scarcity of Pacific Island educators, while the majority of students are of Pacific Island descent?
Okay, these documents are for people that are non-Pacific. They're not actually designed for Pacifica people. They're designed for teachers of Pacific learners. And so ideally you show them the links, why it's important that we do this. And then ensuring that you also do this with your community so that your community can see that it's strategic what you're doing. It's designed to ensure that we've got the best quality opportunities for our Pacific learners. And then what happens is it's not just about Pacific, it's about all learners. You start to see that your cultural competence goes right across.
Yeah.
And in effect, if teachers are doing their job with Tautai ako, then effectively they can see the connect with tapasa. And then they see that Key Shift 3 is an element of how we normally behave.
Yeah. Helen, Tautai Moana, they are a service, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but you provide a service to support all principals, not just specific principals, all principals across the Motu, right?
All
and your
principals.
service, absolutely, and your service is free. Is that correct?
Service is free. We're funded by the ministry at the moment.
So if we've got any first-time principals out there,
our service is free to the school, free to the principal.
Oh, that's
and what
awesome.
we do is we have principals leading principals. So and I think that it doesn't mean to say we're the only way in which we can develop this leadership framework, but we do have that understanding of the complexity of principalship and leadership. Now, we don't just work with principals, we work with senior leaders, we work with staff, we work with the board, and we work with the community. And our next phase is to continue to collect voice from the students to find out what their needs are. Yeah.
Helen Varney, member of the New Zealand Order of Merit, thank you so much for thank you so much for sharing your knowledge, your mahi, your expertise. I'm going to hand it over to Rose right now. Yep, there you go. I'm going to hand it over to Rose right now to say a big thank you to you. Thank you once again. Thank you.
Me taki, Helen. Thank you for sharing your personal Pacific story with us. You're so right about the importance of love for our learners, knowing our learners, and making those connections with our Pacific children and their families. We've identified ways that leaders can reflect on their own practice and strengthen their leadership capabilities. On behalf of us all here today, we thank you for the important work that you do. You continue to inspire us to be effective leaders and to do the best for our Pacific communities. We appreciate you so much for being part of our National Fono today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Helen.
Does that mean I have to go? Can't I stay and listen?
Of course you can. We'll just put you on mute.
Okay.
But thank you. If anyone has any questions for Helen, or if you want to contact Helen directly, she does have a website. The website is live. It's just Google Tautai Moana and you'll see Helen and her team and the wonderful work that they're actually doing to support leaders and principals in this space. Thank you.